Hi guys, it's Kat, aka Mrs. B 1948 again. For those of you that don't know me, I am an admin and I am the social media and public relations team leader for Strong Prison Wives and Family. And I am here today to discuss a matter that is very real and it's raw, and I'm doing it right now because this is raw for me. It's about losing somebody when you have a loved one who's incarcerated. It's about death in your family, whether it's death in their family. I've had it all. So it's probably about, I don't know, 8 or 9 hours after Ro released her video about her mom and what happened with her father, and so on and so forth. So I was literally watching that video and I was in tears because, for those of you that don't know, I am a firm believer that Ro and I are complete soul sisters. The way we were raised, our likes, our passions. And now it's very weird because there's parallels happening in our personal lives, you know. So this is me because it brought back everything, what I went through. And now here's this person that I love and adore who's going through something very horrific. And I'm going to tell you right now, I am going to break down and cry because the whole thing is just, very emotional. And I am extremely emotional right now because I know what Ro is feeling when everybody depends on you. And that's why I'm here to do this. So I have been on both spectrums of somebody passing away while my husband was in jail. His second bid was, it was, I want to say like a 4.5 month time. And in those 4.5 months, he was in jail and his brother passed away. I've told this story before, but I'm going to tell it because I'm going to tell everything in this whole entire video to let you know what I experienced during this. So needless to say, he and I were not dating at that time, and they have a heart condition that runs in their family. It was the 25th anniversary of his father's death, whom was in the parking lot at work and dropped out of a heart attack when my husband was 17 years old. Never came home from work. Very traumatic. So, back in, I want to say 2008, 2009, he did this 9 months in there, and it was Memorial Day weekend, same weekend, and I had spoken to his brother, and he was shaking, his hands were shaking. They have heart problems in their family, and he did not look good and was going to go camping, and Mr. Sexy had called me and asked me to call him, and we hadn't heard from him. It was probably like a 2-day period, but I knew he was going camping and I knew he was going away. So that Sunday morning, I received my morning phone call. Now, mind you, we weren't dating, so this is very important. And we had the type of relationship where we never lied to each other or anything like that. We were very blunt with one another. But this was a different story. So he had called me and he had said, you really need to tell him I need to talk to him. He needs to come down here and I said, okay. I got off the phone with him, and his sister-in-law ended up calling me and telling me that my future brother-in-law had passed away. He got out of the shower and he had a heart attack right there on the floor. She had asked me not to say anything. I could not defy that. I wasn't family. We weren't married. he has two other brothers. They were going to go down to the prison and have a visit and tell him face to face. In the meantime, he calls me and he asked me to do something to get a hold of his brother. I'm not going to say what it was. And I had to lie to him and just, make up excuses, talk him down and just say, look, he's camping. But I knew that his brother passed away and I was literally lying to him. But we weren't married. We weren't dating. This was the call that I made. So, anyways, needless to say, we were good. And a couple hours later, he called me, and I knew when I looked at the phone that he knew. And I answered the phone, and he was real mean and angry, and he said, well, because he knows I'm obsessed with the Oscars. And he goes, well, the Oscar goes too. And I said, excuse me? And he goes, you knew. You knew when I called you this morning. You knew that my brother passed away. And I said, yeah, I did. I'm not going to lie to you. I said, but we're not dating. And this is family. And he was so mad at me. So mad at me. And I really, to this day, I still don't think that he ever truly forgave me for that. But we got past it, and I think a lot of that not totally forgetting about it has a lot to do with his first wife. Totally different subject. Now, my experience, when I had somebody die in my family, and you're not going to believe this, and this is not about being one over the other or more pity for one another or whatever. This is sharing our experiences with you and showing you that this is not easy. And how did I get through it? How did I deal with it? Or how did she deal with it? Or so on and so forth. So, my father, I've also said this, and this is not something that I have spoken about often, or especially in this platform. My mother and father got divorced probably 22 years ago. And my father, I thought, was coming out of the closet and going to be a homosexual, and I was so excited about it, and he ended up getting mixed up in the wrong crowd, and he ended up getting addicted to crack cocaine and became a flat-out junkie. This was a man who owned a business, top of his field in hair coloring, was known throughout Canada. Just an amazing human being, and it just goes back to show you that when you wake up in the morning, you need to look at yourself in the mirror when you go and you brush your teeth and love who you are. If you don't like what you see, there are big problems, and that's where you need to work on. That's first and foremost. Needless to say, this went on for 17 years. He was my knight in shining armor, my father. When they say daddy's little girl, you are looking at her right here. I adored my father. He was amazing. And this horrible, horrific addiction took him over. And I stayed in his corner as long as I could. And there came a time in my life where it was right around the time when my relationship had started with Mr. Sexy, and he said something very derogatory about him, and I thought, that's it, I have to cut the cord. And I knew I could not have my father's drama. Like, I did not want the two of them to mix. I didn't want them to mesh. They didn't get along 30 years ago because Mr. Sexy and I have known each other for 30 years. And I think it's because my father couldn't be as his way with Mr. Sexy. Mr. Sexy is very on point when it comes to character, and my father couldn't schmooze him. So, anyways, I decided to cut him off. There was a point where he was just lashing out at me and just was mean and nasty, and this was after being robbed and threatened and so on and so forth, and et cetera, et cetera. 17 years. So I cut him off. Well, the Christmas before Mr. Sexy came home, and this is, by the way, happening while my mother was fighting cancer, colon cancer. My mother was diagnosed with breast cancer when I was 8 years old. She had a radical mastectomy. She was cut from here to here and was completely concaved on this side of her chest. Like, she could not wear anything low cut. And now that I'm older and I think back, like, we never saw her bald, or we never saw her get sick. And that's because of my father, and he probably did not handle it well. And you didn't talk about cancer the way that you talk about cancer now. I'm 47 years old. So you're talking like a long time ago this happened. Needless to say, my mother was in remission for 32 years, and while Mr. Sexy was in jail, I took her for a routine colonoscopy, and she was diagnosed with colon cancer. So I had a double whammy. I was dealing with the craziness of my father, and my mother was sick. My sister lives about an hour away from me. My mother had lived about 10 minutes away from me, 5 minutes tops, anywhere between there. So I am the oldest sibling, and I have what they call the older sibling syndrome, which is where, you know, I guess when one parent, you feel responsible. So now it's just me and my sister. So anyways, when my father went down this evil, dark road, I guess, you know, everything becomes your own responsibility, and so on and so forth. So this would not be anything if we did not have technical difficulties or an IT issue. The storage in my iPod ran low, and it stopped the recording in the middle of that whole thing, and I am going to pick up and go where I was from there. So my father, I felt like it was my responsibility to take care of my family. And of course, when my mother got cancer, you all know that, if you don't know this, but I work at a cancer hospital. So not only has cancer been in my life, except for 8 years, because those 32 years, my mother would go to the doctors and you would be scared, you know, does she have it again? And I know what that feels like personally, because not only did my mother have breast cancer, but my father's mother had it, and I too have to be careful. I have been getting mammograms since I was 25 years old. I fought up until about 5 years ago to get MRIs because I have lumpy breasts because I don't have any children. So the MRI gets a deeper image than the other test. I can't think of it right now. But I've been doing that since I was 25. And now I go twice a year. So I have to go through it, you know. And because now she has colon cancer, I have to get colonoscopies every 5 years. So I know. But needless to say, when my mother got sick, I took on the brunt of taking care of her. And my mother would have to go. She fought for 3.5 years. Chemo every 2 weeks. We would go on Thursdays. We would spend anywhere from 6 to 8 hours. And then she would take it home. And we would have to return the pump on Saturdays, and they would remove the pump. And I would just think about her, you know, she never wanted anybody with her. She lived in an apartment, and I would think about what that was like to hear this thing pumping in this whatever. And she actually had a treatment, and we made another call. So my father ended up, that Christmas before Mr. Sexy came home, my father ended up in intensive care on December 23rd in the hospital across the street from where I work. My sister found out. My sister and father were not speaking. She broke him off right after everything that she had found out. He never met my nephew. She'd found out that he was in intensive care. And I made the decision that I was going to have to go there. Not I have to, but I chose to go there and make amends with him. And I walked up to intensive care, and I told the nurse who I was. And the nurse said, he's been asking for you. And I said, okay. I said, but I want to lay it on the line. I said, look, the holidays are around the corner. You have a ton of sick patients. And I'm not saying my father's not sick. I said, but if he starts his crap, I'm leaving. I'm walking out, no explanation. So I'm just warning you right now. And she says, we get it. So she understood. And I remember walking, and I walked in there, and I looked at him in the bed, and I just couldn't believe that this was my knight in shining armor. He looked helpless, and I remember thinking to myself, this is the last time I'm going to see my father. And the thing is that, and please don't hate me, but when you've seen somebody suffer, whether it's they suffer their own demons or they're suffering this horrific, horrible disease that is just eating them up alive and gnawing at the family, watching them die and deteriorate and lose themselves, you kind of think these thoughts and say, you know, just take them. And you think in your head, you know, this is going to be, not that it's going to be easy, but you're going to be prepared, but you're never prepared. Never. So, my father and I talked, and I got what he thought was an apology, and I thought that was huge. This is a huge step. And he started again, and I was like, you know what, I gotta go. I gotta go back to work. And I kissed him on the forehead, and I walked out. And I called my sister. So, a couple days went by. It was Saturday, I want to say. No, it was probably the day after Christmas. I called the hospital, and the hospital said, I'm sorry, but he checked himself out. We didn't even get the chance to, remove anything, his IV or anything. And I said, oh, okay. And I have, his cousins, and my father was an only child, but these cousins were like brothers and sisters to him. And the thing is that, they were very close to us. Part 3. Continuation to my father's cousins who were extremely close to us. So during Christmas, my father he was binging, and he was leaving horrible, nasty messages. And needless to say, on January 8th, I received a phone call while I was at work from one of these cousins, saying that my father had passed away on New Year's Day. And again, yes, I was like, oh my God, he's finally free. And then, of course, there's telling Mr. Sexy And I'm very grateful because those first 3 years while he was away, he was 8 hours away in the mountains. And I only got to see him twice a year. So, but I remember going to my first visit, and I remember how hard it was to look at him because, and that's the thing, everybody, more people need to understand about relationships is that you need to put yourself in their shoes. You need to understand what they're going through. And I know it gets hard because you're all involved in yourself, but like, think about, I had to think about what he was thinking about, and you know wishing that he could be there for me, and knowing how difficult and hard this whole thing was with my dad, and how now, and now I'm left with this horrific mess because, it had been a week that had gone by that my father was sitting in the county morgue. So now I have all these other new problems, and he couldn't be there to help me. It was just hard. And here's the thing, the day after, I'm supposed to take my mother for chemo and tell her that, the man that she still loved had passed away. And she had tests that day. And my sister and I discussed it. And we said, we have to get her through this day. She has to get through this treatment. And I will tell her. And it was me that had to tell her. Nobody was there with me. Just me. And she asked about him all the time. Like, I really think that she would have taken him back. So, and she knew what was going on. My phone was buzzing. I got her home, and of course she's got the thing on her. And here I have to tell her, like, and I just looked at her and I said, Mom, Dad's gone and he's free. And she didn't get it. And I had to say it again. And it was, again, you think you're prepared and you're not. And I even today, to this day, it's the 12th, and I know it's approaching, and I think, but you can't dwell on it. So, I got through it. We got through it. And exactly 1 year into the date, on January 8th, my mother passed away. And he was home. And it's still hard. Sometimes it's even harder because, you're worried about what he has to endure. I mean, think about it, my father passes away on January. He comes home in April, and the following January, my mother passes away. Considering what his past was like, it's a lot. But we're here. And that's what this video is really all about. It's to reiterate what Ro was saying. And I don't know if you guys saw the comment on the video that she had posted, where I posted a quote, and it's from my beloved Brene Brown. I love her. Google her. She's amazing. She's been on Oprah. But it's a huge thing that you need to think about. Like, the body keeps score, and it always wins. That's why we need to get it out, whether it be through writing or working out or dancing it out or whatever. Whatever it is, it needs to be released. It needs to be let go. It needs to be passed on. And that's what I would do. Like, I would literally write down the things that I couldn't say. And again, like, Ro's video hit me hard because I know what it's like when you're depended on, and everybody, you know, just thinks that you're made of marble and you can't be in a bad mood, or you can't have a bad day, or, you know, or you feel like you can't have a bad day, or, you know, you're supposed to be in a good mood because so many people depend on you. But you have to just give yourself that time. And again, I'm here because the thing is, you know, I'm to the point now, and when you talk about family members and lashing out because they can't deal with it, I ended up personally getting into a huge riffraff with my uncle because of my mother. He couldn't handle it, and he had a 50th wedding anniversary, and he lashed out at me in front of everybody because he didn't like the way I was handling things. If you guys all recall, or if you don't know, that probably 6 months before Mr. Sexy came home, I had anxiety so bad, panic attacks that were so bad that I cracked ribs, because I would literally get up in the morning and I would gag because I was so scared to face the world. And I didn't want to go out there because I was dealing with so much. And, you know, they put me on a slight anxiety, whatever, and it calmed me down. And my doctor looked at me and he said, with everything you've been through, I can't believe you haven't been on these already. Like, I can't believe it took you this long. And it took so much to make that stop. And I'm so fortunate that I have the resources that I could go and do that, because not everybody has that. But again, this is why I'm doing this, because I didn't take that advice. I was giving it, but I wasn't doing it. I wasn't practicing what I preached. And my body couldn't handle it anymore. And my uncle thought I was lying, and I was angry, and I was mad because, you know, again, here I thought to myself, all these years I've supported everybody with no judgment, nothing, open arms, love. And here I went through this horrific thing alone because he was still away. And we had a family history. We have mental illness in my family. Like, his sister committed suicide. And you're gonna, really? And he has yet to apologize, and he's been fake and phony, and now he's not doing good. And I'm sorry, but can't. I know, but I can't. So that's why I'm here, is to tell you that I know firsthand, you guys, and I'm really here to say you need to get it out. Like, go get a book. Go get, you know, you don't have to spend a lot of money. You could go to the dollar store and get one of those black and white little composition notebooks. They're not little. I know my dollar store even sells little journals. Write it down. Write it down. If you can't say it, write it down, but get it out. Get it out. You know, do yoga. If you can't afford yoga, go on YouTube. There's tons of them. Just get it out, girls. And everybody, not just girls, gentlemen, everybody. But I'm going to end this now, and this is to teach you again. So I apologize for all the sobbiness, but I thought it was time to share this story after Ro was so vulnerable and shared her story. And she does so much for us, so much. And she's so incredible and amazing. And Ro, it just hurts me. It hurts me to see another person be taken by this horrific and horrible disease. It's not fair. And I work in it. So, one day at a time. Make sure you take care of yourself. Do you. Stay strong. I love each and every one of you, and thank you so, so much